Now, with all that's going on, let's go to our weekly chat with the commanding and persuasive Ms Credlin. Peter, good to talk to you again. You have written a splendid, well, you write beautifully, but she's written a splendid piece and she'll be criticised by the Liberal Party, but in a way, you're trying to urge a new approach. You've said of Scott Morrison, since the election win, and with another election around the corner on the pandemic, so far his performance has been, you said, sort of mixed, good on closing international borders and rolling out income support, only fair on vaccine sourcing and the subsequent rollout. But you said beyond COVID, the question asked around Canberra is, what does the Morrison government really stand for? Is it your view that the public don't know? And if they don't know, they might vote no. Peter.
Well, if they don't know if they don't know, they will vote no. That's the first point. I mean, that's the reality of where governments are going for a fourth term. I think the government at this point in time, what it stands for and what it will deliver if it's elected at the next election for the next term, is too nebulous. The pandemic has been a massive distraction. I understand it's occupied everyone in Canberra and right around the country, but it stopped the Prime Minister crafting out a personality for himself post the Turnbull era to then sell to the Australian people. He did very well at the start of the pandemic. He's done well actually in the pandemic on issues where there is constitutional clarity about what's state, what's federal. But when it gets outside of his control, when he has to negotiate and national cabinetise things through, I think it's diminished him. I think it's brought him down to the level of scrapping premiers, and that's not what you vote a Prime Minister in to be. You want decisiveness, you want action, you want things remedied. And I think this is where we've got to get to Christmas. The PM desperately needs us to move out of these lockdowns and get back to politics as normal, or as much as it's going to be normal for a little while, and set forward an agenda. That's what's missing.
So you made a really good point, well, many good points, but you said the Prime Minister, he's the Chief Minister, must be able to do things that others can't do. Now, are we no longer a federation, no longer a democracy? I mean, here we are. You and I can't go to Queensland. Here we've got people sort of locked up and the freedoms are taken away. I mean, he's got to reassert the nationality of the nation.
He has to bring back Australia as opposed to scrapping states. Part of that will be opening the borders. I think once it's open and people are travelling the world again, they'll see themselves as Australians, not just Queenslanders, not just Victorians. I think the other challenge is he has to tell us what he stands for. I mean, to date, we haven't had enough of the culture war, the issues about gender, let's say, the education issues about the curriculum. Scott Morrison has been really good on the numbers, the nuts and bolts, the things that we'd expect from a Prime Minister, but the vision and the personality he wants for the country, that's sort of been absent. I think that's what people are looking for him to deliver. And that'll be the challenge, I think.
Well, even sort of people you and I meet in the street now know about Section 92 of the Constitution, which provides that intercourse, quote, among the states should be absolutely free. Now, it's not. And they're saying, well, who the hell can say you can't go to Queensland, you can't go to WA, Australians can't come back to Australia? I mean, that's what they're worried about, isn't it? And he's got to address these issues.
And this pandemic has opened up the wound that is... I'm not going to say the Federation's broken, Alan, but I think there's real issues. There's a fault line in our Federation. And when Tony Abbott was elected in 2013, he promised Federation reform. There was a white paper process. There was a series of day-long meetings with the Premiers and the Prime Minister about carving up a better way to stop this argy-bargy and this scrapping that goes on, particularly over money, between our two big levels of government. Now, that was abandoned under Malcolm Turnbull. We then hit this pandemic crisis, and you can see now exactly why it was needed prior to 2013. I mean, the Commonwealth doles out the money, but it has no great control over education and health. You can see now Queensland hasn't got COVID cases, or only a handful, and they're very concerned about their hospital system. Correct. And rather than anyone holding Palaszczuk and government to account for the fact that they have underfunded hospitals for some time, they've made it all about Scott Morrison today.
That's right. Lockdown, and then the government in Canberra will fund people who are affected by the lockdown. I mean, this national cabinet, he's got to abandon this stuff. You wrote he's been more a chairman of a committee than a national leader. He's got to now take charge of domestic policy, and he's got to have a fight with the premiers if need be.
Absolutely. President Truman used to have a sign on his desk that says, "The buck stops here." And what people are willing the Prime Minister to do is to be the boss, right?
Yep.
To be the, they are the lender of last resort. They're the place where all the decisions go. Look, if it was easy, the departments would have fixed it. It was marginally a little bit harder, a minister would have solved it. The fact that it's in the Prime Minister's office and on his or her desk tells you it's tough, that there's often not a right answer, and that there's political damage that could happen if you pick or make the wrong call. And I think that's where Morrison has to show he's big enough, tough enough, ugly enough to lead the country and actually lead, not just sit there and, chair a good meeting with premiers.
There is, can I just say to our viewers, and keep looking at this lady, there is free advice to the leader. Now, this is the woman who gave free advice to Tony
advice
Abbott.
I was going to say, free advice, my father would say, is worth what you pay for.
That's right. Now, hang on. Free advice, you see, and you could hear her articulate the kind of advice. And Abbott won 25 seats from Labor in 2 elections. There's a reason he won it. He knew what he stood for. He had tough ladies like this behind him saying, keep the message simple, but go out and persuade the public there's a reason to vote for us. Don't vote for us just because the other mob are no good. Great to talk to you. Keep doing wonderful work.
Great
Lovely
to
talk. All right, Peter. We'll talk to you next week. There she is, Peta Credlin.